at one point or another. You might have heard that only a few centuries ago, people thought the Earth was flat. People believed that if you sailed too far out, you would reach the literal edge of the world and fall off. Well, this is quite misleading, as people have known the Earth to be spherical since the time of ancient Greece. The earliest known evidence for the concept of a spherical Earth can be traced back to Greek philosophers during the 6th century BC. A few centuries later, no educated person thought the world was anything but a round. This idea slowly spread and gradually became accepted as fact all across the globe. And while some cultures held on to the flat Earth idea for quite a while, by the time of the Middle Ages, the Earth was most definitely a globe. Medieval books and illustrations repeatedly make the point that the Earth is round and not flat. The confusion actually comes from historians looking back and misinterpreting certain events and literature. While people may not have believed the Earth to be flat as much as we thought for the longest time, we definitely believed ourselves to be the center of the universe. It's called the geocentric model. And it actually makes a lot of sense from our point of view down here. On the surface, it actually looks like the sun, moon, visible planets and distant stars orbit around a stationary Earth. It wasn't until the late 16th century that the geocentric model was gradually superseded by the heliocentric model, where the sun is the center and the Earth is simply one planet among many orbiting around it. Earth is the only planet not named after a Greek or Roman god or goddess. The name comes from Old Germanic words such as earth and earth. And while its name is, of course, different in every language, what they all have in common is that almost every name derived from a word that means soil or ground. For example, here in Sweden, the planet's name is Udon and the word for soil is used. The Latin names, Terra and Tellus, can also be used as synonyms. We all know that one day here on Earth is 24 hours long, and the reason we have days in the first place is because the Earth is rotating on its own axis while orbiting the Sun. But if we do the calculations, we find it for the Earth to make one full revolution, it only takes 23 hours, 56 minutes and 4 seconds. This is called a sidereal day, and it's actually not the way we calculate the one full day here on Earth. This is because the unit of time known as day also has to account for the orbit around our Sun. Let's take this specific point on Earth. Now let's simulate the day passing by, rotating the planet. Once the point reaches the same position, one sidereal day has passed, or 23 hours, 6 minutes and 4 seconds. What makes a solar day 24 hours long is the location of this spot relative to the Sun. While the Earth has definitely made a full rotation, it also moved a bit in its year-long orbit around the Sun. Therefore, it actually needs to rotate a bit more so that this point is now facing the Sun like it did when it started. And just like a day isn't really 24 hours long, a year isn't really 365 days long. The reason for this is not the same. However, we count days based on a rotation of the Earth, while the year is based on the orbital period around the Sun. And this is the problem. The day-night cycle has nothing to do with the yearly cycle, yet a year is determined by the day-night cycle. This results in 1 year of being 365.4 to 5 days long. This is where leap years come into play every 4th year. We squeeze in an extra day at the end of February because the Earth's spin and the Earth's orbit around the Sun ever so slightly overlap. Without leap year, our calendars would get confused and summer would eventually be winter and vice versa. Liquid water is a crucial part for our life here on Earth, yet the origin of our planet's water remains unclear. More specifically, why do Earth have so much more liquid water compared to almost every other body in the solar system? I say almost every other body, because one of Jupiter's moons, called Europa, may contain more than twice as much liquid water found here on Earth. Even though it's smaller than our moon, this subsurface ocean is trapped under a vast sheet of ice and could potentially contain life. Wildlife may or may not be so abundant in the universe, the Earth is truly teeming with it. It is everywhere and seems to somehow survive everything. Top of Mount Everest, no problem. At bottom of the ocean, of course, at the edge of the atmosphere. Sure. Inside NASA is a clean rooms which are meant to be sterilized, in hospitable environments. It truly does. Let's take a walk outside and bring a spoon with you. Good. Now dig up some soil and take a look at it. This spoonful of soil contains more living organisms than there are humans on this planet. Soil is a paradise for tiny creatures eating and pooping and reproducing their way towards glorious soil fertility. Luckily, we can see any of that. Otherwise I would have flipped my shit by now in an equally mindfuck fashion for every grain of sand on Earth. There are roughly 10,000 stars in the universe. Welcome to Earth, Texas, the only city on Earth named Earth. Well, at least in English, it has a population of around 1,000 and was originally called Fairlawn. However, they soon learned of another city by that name. So the townspeople sent in suggestions for a new one and US Earth became the first Earth on Earth. Most of us know that Mount Everest is the tallest point on the planet. Well, no, it isn't, actually. It's only the highest mountain by elevation above sea level. The tallest point on Earth has either the greatest distance from the center or the least distance to space is Mount Chimborazo. This is because the Earth is not really a perfect sphere, but something called a spheroid. This basically means that the Earth is a bit thicker along the equator compared to the poles, and as Mount Chimborazo is very close to the equator, it just barely beats Mount Everest. The Earth has been home to every living thing in the universe that we know of. But why is that? If the universe has existed for so many billions of years, why is space so seemingly empty? Well, that's not exactly what this video is about. And I have, in fact, talked about this in numerous videos before. But a possible answer or perhaps clue to that question is the Earth itself, because Earth is extremely complicated. Its creation and what led to our existence is nothing short of an accident, or rather a very long list of accidents. It all started roughly 4.54 billion years ago when our solar system was nothing but a gigantic cloud of dust and particles known as a solar nebula due to gravity. Things eventually started spinning and the sun began to take form in the center, while planets and smaller bodies formed around it. Out of sheer luck, the Earth formed at just the right distance, so it would not be too hot or too cold for us humans to exist many years later. The so-called habitable or Goldilocks zone. Not only that, but the collision itself is thought to be responsible for tilting the Earth at an angle, giving us seasons. All the volcanic activity during this period began the creation of Earth's atmosphere. In turn, the comets brought with them ice that melted and helped to cool this hellish landscape to create the Earth's crust and possibly the oceans. Roughly 3.8 billion years ago, the Earth had cooled enough for life to take form. However, it wasn't until 2 billion years ago when photosynthetic life began to appear, enriching the atmosphere with life-essential oxygen. We still don't know how life began on this planet, but it's quite evident that the lot is required for it to begin. You can't just have an Earth-like planet and expect that to be enough. Of course. This is all assuming that an Earth-like planet is required for life to exist. Oh. And 63 Earths can fit inside Uranus. So at the end of this video I'd like to invite you to please subscribe my channel. Also like and share the video to your family and friends. Thanks. Have a great day.